Have you ever really stopped to think about what a company share is? It's so much more than just a ticker symbol on a screen. It has a birth, a life, and a journey. And it's all governed by a surprisingly modern set of rules that have totally changed the game. So today, we're going to follow that life cycle, from the moment it's created all the way to a new owner. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so the first thing you have to wrap your head around is that the old rulebook for company shares has basically been thrown out. We've gotten rid of old kind of rigid ideas like par value, which was really just an arbitrary face value that often had nothing to do with a share's actual worth. Today's system is way more flexible, and it's all built around one single powerful idea, the solvency test. This one shift changes pretty much everything, and we're about to see how.
So that begs the question, right? If a share doesn't have that old school par value anymore, what exactly is it?
Well, under the new rules, it's actually incredibly simple. A share is legally defined as personal property, just like your car or your house. It gives you rights that you can enforce in court. The real beauty here is the simplification. By ditching those old concepts like fixed par values and these artificial limits on how much capital a company could raise, the system is just so much more dynamic. It reflects a company's real value right now, not some random number they picked years ago.
So how is one of these things actually born? Let's take a look at the process of creating and issuing a share.
The power to create new shares rests with the board of directors. But, and this is a big but, that power isn't unlimited. See, there's a really important protection for existing shareholders called preemptive rights. Basically, it means if the company wants to issue new shares, they have to offer them to the current owners first. Why is that so important? Well, it stops your ownership from getting watered down. Say you own 10% of a company. If the board just issues a ton of new shares to some outsider, your stake could drop to 5% overnight. Preemptive rights give you the first shot at buying new shares to keep your ownership percentage right where it was. It's a fundamental piece of fairness built right into the system.
So when is a share officially born? What's the exact moment? It's not when a deal is signed or when a fancy certificate is printed. Legally, a share springs into existence the second the new owner's name is physically entered into the company's share register. That's it. It's a simple little administrative act, but it carries enormous legal weight. Okay, so a share has been created. The next obvious question is, what's it worth and how does somebody actually pay for it? And you know what? The answer is way more flexible than you might think. We all tend to think you buy shares with cash, but the reality is much, much broader. You can pay for shares with a promise to pay later, like a promissory note. You can pay with property. We're talking a building, a fleet of vehicles, a patent. You can even pay for shares with a contract for services you're going to provide in the future. This flexibility is amazing because it lets companies bring in really valuable assets or expertise in exchange for ownership, not just cash. But with all this flexibility comes a massive, massive responsibility. The board can't just take any old thing for a share. They have a legal duty to formally resolve that whatever they're accepting is fair and reasonable, not just to the company, but to all the other shareholders. This is what stops them from cutting sweetheart deals that end up devaluing everybody else's investment. This brings us to the single most important rule in the whole modern system, the solvency test. You can think of this as the ultimate safety check that governs just about every major financial decision a company makes about its shares. It sounds technical, but it's actually a really simple two-part check. First, there's the liquidity test. After this transaction is done, can the company still pay its bills as they come due? And second, the balance sheet test. Are the company's total assets still worth more than its total liabilities? The company has to be able to say yes to both. No ifs, ands, or buts. So when do they have to pull out this test? Well, it's required for 3 key actions. 1, paying dividends. 2, buying back its own shares. And 3, this is the really interesting one, financially helping someone else buy the company's shares. That last one is a big deal because it stops a company from basically using money it doesn't have to fund the purchase of its own stock. In all these situations, the directors have to sign off that the company will still be solvent after the money leaves the building. So the share has been created, it's been paid for, its life is governed by the solvency test. What about its final journey, moving to a new owner? All right, it's time to bust a really common myth. Many of us think that a fancy paper share certificate, with the embossed seal, is the ultimate proof that you own a share. Legally, that's just not true. That certificate is basically a receipt. The one and only legally binding proof of ownership is having your name listed in the company's official share register. That's where ownership truly lives.
So, why does all of this really matter? Because the stakes here are incredibly high. For directors, if they approve a transaction and the company fails the solvency test, or they issue shares for a totally unfair price, they can be held personally liable. And for shareholders, listen to this. If you get a dividend from a company that was secretly insolvent at the time, you could be forced to pay it all back. This system puts real teeth into making sure everyone follows the rules.
And that kind of brings us to our final thought. This modern system gives directors a huge amount of power and flexibility to issue shares and run the company. But it balances that power with some very strict duties and some very severe personal consequences for getting it wrong. So the ultimate question this all leaves us with is, does this balance of power and responsibility truly guarantee fairness for everyone involved? It's definitely something to think about.